and welcome to another Eclectic book diary. Today's video is going to be a review of Pachinko by Min Jin Lee, which is a historical fiction novel that follows a Korean family who immigrate to Japan, I think during or a little before World War II. The story is pretty much character driven, where we follow the lives of these characters and their encounters of discrimination, stereotyping basically, and so many other important aspects of the 20th century's Korean experience that happens in Japan. I believe this book was published in 2017. I have first read it last year, and just a week ago I decided to read it again, and after a reread I decided to make this review. The story takes place into 3 different sections where we follow these characters through a mostly, I believe, linear timeline with a bit of time jumps between these sections. The time jumps, though, they don't affect the overall feel of this book. They are not very abrasive. In the first part, we meet in my opinion, a very key character. Like, even though we meet a lot of characters in this book, there are a few characters that are more consistent throughout the layout of the book, and I feel like one of those characters, whose name is Sunja, is actually, as I said, the key element or the key characters, in the sense that she links everything else. Like, through her lineage almost, we get to meet all these different characters and people throughout this book. Usually at this point of the video I give a synopsis for the book that I'm reviewing. I'm gonna delay the synopsis just a bit. So before we move to that section, let's first discuss the link between the name of the book and the actual content of the same book. Obviously, the name of the book is Pachinko, and as far as I know, the author wanted to name the book Motherland in the beginning, but then after she did some interviews with some Korean people, she realized how much they related back to the Pachinko game that has like a major impact. Obviously, they decided to switch the name, which I personally believe was a very wise decision on their part to change it to Pachinko, as Pachinko is a kind of a very unpredictable, uncontrollable type of a game, which is essentially a gambling machine. So as I said, it's a very unpredictable type of a game, and I feel that that was a great parallel to the lives of these characters throughout this book, because of how unpredictable and uncontrollable the events of their lives and what happens to them. And it's a great metaphor in general. So I feel that the book and the name of the book just makes so much sense together. Even though the whole idea of Pachinko just gets introduced way later in the book, we don't get to interact with this Pachinko concept at all at the beginning of the story. However, it makes so much sense, especially once you reach that point. You can make that connection very easily, in my opinion. So now let's go to the more spoilery part, where I will be sharing a bit of the synopsis of this whole story. If you don't want to be spoiled at all, even if this is like in the beginning of the book, I always leave timestamps, so it should be so easy to just skip to the next one. So 1, 2, 3, let's go. So in the beginning of the story, we meet Huni, who is born with a cleft lip and kind of a twisted leg, and it's generally kind of understood that he wouldn't get to be married. Even his parents, they loved him and all of that, but they weren't actually pursuing the idea of marrying him. However, after the Japan-Korea annexation treaty, many families were kind of left without food even, and the situations were miserable for so many families. But Hooni's family has a much more stable position throughout this whole situation, and because of that, a matchmaker arranged this marriage between Hooni and a girl named Jin, who was actually a daughter of a poor family that lost everything during the colonial conquest. And then we follow their journey of trying to having kids. They have a daughter, and they name her Sunja, and then we follow Sunja's life and her relationship with her mother and her father, especially in her early years. And then unfortunately Hooni dies when she is about 13 years old, and just when Sunja turns 16, she meets a man, goes by the name Ko Hansu, and he is actually a much older man, a wealthy fish broker, if I'm not mistaken. At the beginning, she doesn't really want to talk to him and all of that, but then he saves her from this weird situation with a bunch of teenage guys, and afterwards they kind of develop this friendship. And then the relationship becomes more than just friendship, I guess. And after a while, actually Sunja becomes pregnant, and once he hears about that, although he's very excited and he offers to build her a house or buy her a house next to her mother, he tells her that she has nothing to worry about and he will take care of her and would take care of the child, but he can't actually marry her. And then he reveals that he actually is a married man and he has a wife in Japan. And when she hears that, she gets so angry. She tells him to leave her alone. Even though she's heartbroken and all of that, she just realizes that this is not what she wants to do. She doesn't want to be that type of a person. She kind of feels that she made a mistake by trusting him, by being in a relationship with him in general. And then she eventually has to tell her mother about the situation. And then her mother, she discusses this situation with a young Christian minister, I believe, whose name is Big Isaac, who happens to be also suffering from tuberculosis, which was the same illness that eventually killed her father. So he just has this almost like a premonition or a feeling that he should do something about this, and he decides that he's going to ask Sunja to marry him, and in this way he could fulfill some sort of a purpose of his life and give his name to the child that Sunja's gonna have eventually. So he asks her to marry him and she says yes, but now they would actually be moving from Korea to Japan to live with his brother and his brother's wife. This moment is what defines the rest of the story, I guess. So moving on from that section, I feel that this book has the ability to understand people who generally immigrate or leave their homeland and try to live in another place, and the expectations versus the reality of that situation. Just them trying to live their life to the best of their ability while facing all of the extra obstacles that happens through their life. And we follow all of these things throughout the eyes of many generations from the same family line, and we see the changes that happens with time and also the stagnant things that just doesn't really change. It's a great representation of multiple character studies, in my opinion, and it's done in a very smooth sailing type of a storytelling. The book provides a wide range of characters, and the dynamic between these characters are mostly very interesting to follow, even though some characters are a bit more prominent to the story. I feel that every single character that we meet in this book has some significant impact on the story overall, and I feel that is again a very good representation of general life, because in life, no matter how small or big our interaction with other people may be like, they still make an impact of some sort, whether little or big impact. It's up for debate, obviously, for each individual case, but still, I do think that in general our life is like the assembly of these interactions, whether with people or with things. It's still an assembly of moments. So this book just captures that sense very spot on, in my opinion. It's very hard to read sometimes, obviously, because of the nature of the things that are being discussed into this story, but I feel it's important to do that. I personally believe that it is easier, for me at least, to read such important concept within a fictional story than to actually read, for example, a biography of some sort. It was a very interesting thing to see the progression of these characters and to feel for them, to root for them, and sometimes even like feeling really heartbroken by certain decisions and all of that, and you feel angry as well of all the things that happens to them. It's a whole roller coaster of emotional paradox. I highly recommend reading this book, not only for people who generally enjoy historical fiction, but also if you like non-fictional stories that handles these sort of subjects or these sort of topics. I feel like this could be an interesting one. This book also has an adaptation. I believe it was released 3 months ago, or even less than that, in March of 2022. I have seen like a few bits and pieces from the trailer and a few like glimpses of the show. It seems that it has been well made, and there's also the audiobook version if you enjoy listening to books rather than physically reading them, or maybe you are like me where you like to merge audio with the physical one. I always prefer that anyway, but in case you prefer audiobooks, the audiobook version is well done as well, so there is that. So yeah, this was my review of Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. If you enjoy this type of content, feel free to subscribe, and I hope you're having a wonderful day or evening whenever you're watching this, and I also hope you will join me on the next one. Until then, take care, bye bye.